The New York Jets are staring down the barrel of the draft, and there's one major question that needs to be asked. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and today I want to talk about, well, the New York Jets and the big question that looms leading into the NFL draft, and that is, what do you do in the first round? Is the first round as cut and dry as some people think, and you just take the offensive tackle, or maybe in the other camp, do you take the wide receiver? And I've been sitting on this question a lot. Is Brock Bowers in play? Is a trade up in play? Is a trade back in play? Do you take a defensive lineman? Please don't take a defensive lineman. What do you do in the first round? And in all of my thinking and all of my breaking down and all of my analyzing and talking to people that matters, what I've come up with is the reality is that there are two options for the New York Jets in the first round. And that is you take an offensive tackle or you take a wide receiver. And that's it. There are no other options, in my opinion, when it comes to the draft. Now, you can go about that in a bunch of different ways. You can trade up and go and get your wide receiver or your offensive tackle. You can trade back and get your wide receiver or your offensive tackle. You can stick and pick and get your wide receiver or your offensive tackle. But the reality is that those are the only two positions that really should be looked at for the New York Jets in the first round. Now, I love me some Brock Bowers, and in a situation where you trade back, I would throw him in that weapon category of what you're going to go get. But I would not consider him an option at 10 personally. And I love Brock Bowers and the athleticism and the player that he is, but that's just how I feel about it. But going back to the original question, how do you go about it? So let's talk about both sides, the pros and the cons of going offensive tackle and wide receiver in the first round. Come to our own conclusions, and more importantly, I would love to get your guys' opinion in the comment section below of what do you guys think? What do you think the right way is, and why? Don't just be like, I want an offensive tackle. Tell me why. I want to have a conversation. Let's do that in the comment section below. Let's start with the biggest camp, which is probably going to be the offensive tackle camp, which makes a ton of sense. Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith are both here on one-year deals. We saw that the offensive line room last year got decimated with injuries, and so you would have to assume that stocking up in as much talent as possible would do that. This is a great offensive line class, so if you need depth at offensive tackle or interior offensive line, like this is the prime draft class to do it, especially in the first round. And you're getting injury insurance in case of a guy like Tyron Smith goes down, and Morgan Moses did just have surgery, so there is that part that is in question as well. So I totally understand that, but let's talk about some of the cons, some of the bad things that would come if you did take an offensive tackle in the first round. And I think the biggest thing would be, well, what if Tyron Smith plays all 17 games? What if Morgan Moses plays all 17 games? What if we see health at the entire offensive line for the entire year? And now you're talking about taking a guy in the first round who would never see the field in year one. And that would be a mismanagement, in my opinion, of going all in with the Aaron Rodgers window. We need to be maximizing the Aaron Rodgers window. We know we have him for at least 2 more years. You need to maximize that window to push for a Super Bowl. And taking a player in the first round who isn't going to play is not maximizing the window. We saw the New York Jets do that last year with Will McDonald. Will McDonald played 13% of the snaps, and I bet that there is a large contingency of Jets fans that would much rather have had Jackson Smith-Njigba or Anton Harrison or literally any other plethora of players that they were fans of. And again, I was not in on those. I loved Anton Harrison and all that stuff. That would have been the pick that I would have made at 15. But we saw what happens when you take a guy in the first round and he doesn't play, you know, the backlash that came with that. And we lost Bryce Huff and so on and so forth. And so that is a legitimate conversation that at least needs to be had, is Well, what happens when you take a player and then he doesn't play all year? What happens when you take a player and, okay, maybe he does play, but he plays 13% of the snaps, which would be exactly the percentage of snaps that an offensive tackle would take if we got the same amount of games from Tyron Smith last year as we do this year. So this is including Tyron Smith with an injury. So again, there's pros and cons to it. If you're thinking long-term and you want injury insurance, and again, I think a big thing here is you're not a believer in a guy like Carter Warren or Max Mitchell, then offensive tackle at 10 or even a trade up to go get Joe Alt or a trade back and getting a guy like Armarius Mims or any of those guys makes a ton of sense. But let's talk about the other side of the coin, which is the wide receiver coin, right? Which is, okay, cool. Let's say you do believe in guys like Carter Warren and Max Mitchell to back up the guys, which is what I tend to believe. I believe in Carter Warren. I believe in Max Mitchell, especially as high-level backups, which is, I think, what they can be when, they actually get an offseason where they're not injured and one isn't scared that he's dying and all of the other things that go along with an offseason. But more importantly, I think pass catchers win you games. I think if you can get guys who can get open, that's going to win you more games than not. We've seen this model work with the Cincinnati Bengals. They have one of the worst offensive lines year after year after year after year after year after year. But it doesn't matter because guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd were just getting open relatively consistently, really, really quickly, and they were getting out of the way and helping the offensive line that hasn't played well. The same thing can be said about the Kansas City Chiefs, but this is more about how the quarterback helps an offensive line more than anything. The Kansas City Chiefs didn't have any pass catchers that mattered. They also had a really bad offensive line outside of Joe Thuney and Creed Humphreys, and they still were able to go out there and win games. Now, that was off of the athleticism of Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce is one of the best tight ends the sport has ever seen. But again, you can win games without an offensive line, but I don't think you can really win games without pass catchers. And that is where I tend to fall on. If you're looking at this draft and you're staring down the barrel of Rome Odunze, Malik Nabers, and Marvin Harrison Jr., the New York Jets should do everything in their power to get one of those guys, including, but not limited to, trading up as far as 5 to go and get one of those guys. I know for a fact picks 4, 5, and 6 are for sale. And if you're the New York Jets, you got to try to go up and get one of these wide receivers because a combination of Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, and then you add Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers, or Rome Odunze might just be one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver room in the NFL when healthy. And that's referring to Mike Williams because he is awesome when he's healthy. And so, again, let me know what you guys think the New York Jets should do in the comment section below. Should they go a wide receiver? Should they go offensive tackle? And if you don't think they should do either one, why not? And how would you do it? Would you do it in a trade back? Would you do it in a trade up? I love a lot of these wide receivers. I'm cool with Malik Nabers, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr., Troy Franklin, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. All of these guys are really, really cool. So a trade up, a stick and pick, a trade back, I'm cool with anything like that. And I'm a big fan of a lot of these tackles too. Talise Fuaga, Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu, Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton, Patrick Paul, if you're looking at later round guys. Braxton Jones, I believe is his name, the kid out of Texas. I've been watching his tape, and boy, is he something. There's a lot of guys that you're going to be able to... Christian Jones, I believe is what it is, not Braxton. Whatever it is, there's a ton of guys that are available. Let me know what you think the plan should be in the comment section below. And last but not least, go Jets.